Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for tuning in and listening. We've got Larry on his mountaintop with the latest. It appears that things may be dying down a little bit, which would be a good sign over there in Israel. They've been kind of at it, hammering. Israel's been hammering Hamas, and they've been kind of hammering Iranian assets, we could call them, in Syria. And Larry, what's the very, very latest?
Well, the very latest breaking news out of Israel is the fact that DEFCA files reporting Israel's Security Cabinet made a vote against a new Gaza campaign or invasion to halt the Hamas rocket aggression, and that was after 250-plus Hamas rockets were fired into Israel. And at the same time, there was a new threat. Hamas sent Israel a photo image of a vast array of like 280 rockets that were aimed at Haifa and could strike Haifa. And so Israel is not going to invade at the moment. And Times of Israel just reported that from Egypt, says Hamas is now claiming that a Gaza ceasefire will go into effect from midnight tonight.
So hopefully then this will calm down again until the next rocket launch. Maybe they're resupplying themselves. It seems they go into this and then they resupply themselves and then they start it up again. What's your take on that? Has there been any response from Iran?
No response from Iran, but of course yesterday, Iran fired missiles from Syria into Israel, and overnight Israel pretty much took out most of Iranian infrastructure across Syria. And the interesting thing is, my thought on what you just said is that's true. That could very well be the scenario is they're stalling again to resupply their rockets. And on the other hand, too, it certainly appears that the Israeli government has no stomach for another Gaza invasion. So it's kind of a quandary, Stuart.
Yeah, that would seem, are they going to defend their own people, or are they just going to let Hamas, their sworn enemy, Iran, their sworn enemy, continue with this? Or are we going to kind of watch maybe a false peace come out of all this? Peace, when there really is no peace. And we got the Mark Taylor prophecies about Trump, and that he's going to serve out full 8 years. And I guess all we can do is watch and see what happens, because there's an awful lot going on that would tend to indicate, with all the signs that have come down, that we're on the brink of something very, very bad. But maybe I'm misreading all of this. What do you think?
Well, it's very, very interesting. The interesting thing is, in the background, we seem to be seeing real trouble in Tehran and certain areas of Iran as a groundswell of rebellion, if you will, is rising up and calling even for the death of the Khamenei. And that's highly unusual. But the new sanctions, the sanctions on Iran that Trump has placed there, is really becoming crippling. Now, what's interesting also is the fact that one of the biggest groups of countries that are trying to thwart Trump's sanctions on Iran is the EU or Europe, and the terror, literally the immigration terror that's been being caused inside Europe itself is coming from the direction of Iran. So I don't know, Stuart. We're in a very upside-down world.
Good becomes evil, evil becomes good. and it seems to be pervasive in all areas of life. And I guess there's not much you can do about it. And then we have earth changes. We didn't get into that the other day, but well, let's go through your update. First one: Israel strikes nearly all Iranian infrastructure, which you just talked about in Syria. Has that ceased, or is that still ongoing?
It's quiet for the moment. They spent an entire night apparently attacking, Iranian infrastructure in Syria. So for the moment, the northern front is quiet, along with the southern front, which supposedly at midnight in Israel there'll be a ceasefire brokered by Egypt. We'll just have to see.
Yeah. Wow. Let me scroll down here. We got an article here not too long ago about earth changes accelerating. And that was posted on Stan Deo's site. There's a ton of stuff going on all over the world, which would be indicative of the fact that we have an incoming. And by the way, folks, we have a meteor shower that peaks on the 10th and the 11th. You might want to go outside and view it. Usually, sometimes it can be very, very spectacular. We hope it's not too spectacular. But sooner or later, we are going to have a meteor shower unlike anything that we've probably ever seen. If you go into the story of Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah, experts now are quite positive that what happened was a meteor shower. And what's interesting about the meteor shower, it was very, very precise, and Larry has often talked about what he calls smart rocks, very intelligently designed and controlled. And I wonder if that's not where we're at. What's your latest on the earth changes, Larry? I mean, they're going on everywhere.
Yeah. In Stan Deo's article, Earth Changes Accelerate Across the Globe, he brings out with record heat waves, massive fires, giant dust storms, and many, many earthquakes and volcanoes. And he's exactly right. I know we think about some of the earth change activity inside the U.S., especially the West Coast, that's under the guns of the fires and the heat. But this is worldwide. I mean, this is literally not being reported that much, but this is a worldwide phenomenon that's occurring, Stuart.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think people should be. Well, you're not aware of it unless you go all over the world and round up the news from the various countries. We have a tendency to just look out our window and that's the weather, but it's not the weather for the whole world. And when you really analyze what's going on, there has been a major, major acceleration in all phases of Earth changes. And any more news on the sun, other than the fact that it's extremely anomalous?
Not really all that much, Stuart. Of course, it's pretty much blank of sunspots. It's in what they call the minimum, and we're still getting the streams of energized particles from the sun. And at the same time, the sun seems the light is very white and very bright, and the UV is just off the scale, Stuart.
Yeah, people really need to, I know I've mentioned it before, but you need to really be paying attention to the UV ratings, folks. Anything above 5 or 6 can really do you damage. You may not see it right away. A lot of people don't even burn. The damage is subdermal. It affects your below the skin level. And EPA is really starting to warn people about it. And I notice at Space Weather, the radiation levels just keep going up. There's never been a dip. It's just accelerating higher and higher and higher. And that's not good either. Here's the article that Stan posted. Earth changes accelerate. What is causing these record heat waves, massive fire tornadoes, giant dust storms, large earthquakes, Changes are happening to our planet, and the experts are groping for answers. In recent days, some have suggested that what we are witnessing is a natural progression of man-made climate change, but this explanation has generally been received with a lot of skepticism. Something truly dramatic appears to be happening to the globe, and it isn't just because the amount of carbon dioxide in the air suddenly reached some sort of magical tipping point, but without a doubt, temperatures are getting warmer. In July, Death Valley experienced the hottest month ever recorded on the planet. Over in Europe, Saturday was billed as Europe's hottest day ever. Temperatures in Lisbon, Portugal, were expected to top 170 degrees both Saturday and Sunday. Then on the other side of the planet, crippling drought in Australia, devastating farms like a cancer, and things are so hot in North Korea, the government has declared an unprecedented natural disaster. So this is all part, folks, of the approach of the destroyer. And when you go into the book of the Colburn, it's very, very interesting because it talks about the signs, not only natural signs, but uneasiness in the nations, exactly basically what Jesus said was going to happen, where the nations become restless and humanity becomes restless, that they know something is coming. They just don't know what it is. They can't put their finger on it, but it's something that is deadly, and it's coming about at about the right time. Larry, what's your take on this? I mean, we have now entered the 70th year of Israel as a nation state. We only have until September 10th, actually, is when Rosh Hashanah begins, Feast of Trumpets. What do you think? My take is, if anything's going to happen, it's got to happen fairly rapidly. Hopefully not. Hopefully we have a delay of sorts. But it makes you wonder with all this, how do we say, the rhetoric. And I'm very concerned about Trump's squeeze on Iran because they need their war. They want the war for their 12th Ayman, or whatever they call them. And if we squeeze Iran too much, and they fear they're going to be toppled from within, they're going to go for it. What do they got to lose? What do their leaders have to lose by going to war? Daniel 8, war. What do you think?
Yeah, that's very true. But, you know, it's not just there that we're seeing this mental illness, if you will, or mental sickness. Isn't it interesting that in America, we want everybody to come in, illegal or not, it doesn't matter. We want the illegals even worse than we want the legal immigration traffic. And this is the irony of it, Stuart. Everyone that's fleeing their country is coming here for what the communists are trying to rid us of. Isn't that ironic?
Excuse me. Well, that's the way it works in the last days. Logic is completely thrown out the window. Rational, logical thought is an anathema, and you should never voice it. If you want to be part of the crowd, you have to yell, scream, pull your hair out, roll on the floor, and denounce Trump and denounce the White House, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We are moving in, I believe, in a spiritual realm where the demons are being set loose. There's no other explanation for the behavior of people these days. The demons are being set loose. And it's very, very interesting how, you know, when we were talking about the cosmic waves and how they affect people and whatnot, and I'm beginning to wonder if we're not in the preliminary ripples of this gigantic cosmic wave that Dr. Paul LaViolette claimed was coming. And I have actually seen the pictures of the Milky Way core, which is where he says it comes from. And he goes into the folklore of the constellations and how they're arranged, and how Sagittarius actually points its arrow directly towards the core of the Milky Way, and how the Mayans claimed that the Milky Way core was actually the giver of life and the taker of life on planet Earth. And now we know that there are gigantic gravity waves as well as cosmic waves, and they photographed them. And don't forget that this guy in, I think it was Bosnia, he's a mystic, and he said that we were soon going to get hit by, I don't know if you could call it a rogue wave, but a wave of cosmic fire that was going to alter everyone's attitude and I guess their mental capabilities. And it's just very, very fascinating how we're moving so rapidly into all this. What else have you got, Larry? I mean, there's a ton of stuff going on.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention that I'd got a report from Hawaii that seems to indicate that the situation with that volcano is worsening, and
yes.
A lot of the area around that island are now beginning to collapse within. So what Standeo said might happen there appears to be in the early stages now.
Yeah, because I know he said he was very worried they might implode. I mean, the whole island, I suppose, could implode. It's kind of like Mount Rainier and some of those high mountains. When people go on the inside of those and look, they say the rock is porous and kind of half rotten and could collapse anytime. So I'm sure it's the same thing over there. Here's a headline, and just brief comment. Russian fleet rushes to the Arctic over fears the U.S. may have started a war with an unknown alien species. Now, this comes from Sort Your Fall, and you have to put on your thinking hat. And but there are some things here that are kind of interesting when you cross-compare it to Pence and Trump really pushing this space fleet operation. This basically, I guess you could call them deep space operations. What do you think?
Yeah, that's very true. And I don't know if you noticed it, but today, Vice President Mike Pence went and to the Pentagon and actually gave a presentation claiming that the Space Force was needed to be in place by 2020, and asking for the funding to be done. They need billions of dollars to bring this thing out and form this group. And he gave an indication. Of course, he didn't talk about TR-3Bs or any such thing, but he did talk about a lot of the next battles would be in space, and we needed armaments in space to protect what assets America had.
It was very interesting to me. They had a astronaut on the Fox News. They were interviewing him, and he was dead set against this. And I'm thinking to myself, why would he be so dead set against it? Well, he said, we don't need any more bureaucracy of a new space thing. What I really think is going on is he's dead set against this revelation that we have been in outer space for years. We've had a space fleet for I don't know how long, and I know that for a fact because I've seen them myself. And so, there's so much going on that the people have no clue. Underground tunnels that go for, I believe, thousands of miles, if you can believe the truckers that come out and talk about it. We have vacuum-type tunnels for high-speed transportation. Some people have said they go about 2,000 miles an hour under there, and they shuttle back and forth. There's a whole new technology, and it's all part of Alternative 3. I'd like to get into that sometime because I don't think people really understand how real Alternative 3 really is. And, there's a lot going on. And I'm beginning to wonder if maybe we're not going to see some of these things introduced in the near future. I mean, why else would they be bringing it out and talking about it? And I'm sure you saw this deal about this gigantic planet that they've now spotted. Suddenly, we got a planet, 9, 10, 20 times bigger than Jupiter? It's out there?
That's very interesting, Stuart. Matter of fact, they call it it's interesting, they call it a massive glowing rogue planet spotted drifting in space, 12.7 times the mass of Jupiter. And what they're saying about it, Stuart, is the fact that they say it's literally a brown dwarf. Now, doesn't some people liken a brown dwarf to Nibiru or the Destroyer, etc.?
Yes, it's exactly what it is. They're announcing the Destroyer. They're just not calling it that. And we know from the Bible that the Destroyer is going to pass through. We just don't know exactly when. Speaking about when and what's going on in Israel, I wanted to bring a few things to everybody's attention because there's a lot of people that say, well, you have to have this happen, you have to have that happen. Well, some of it's true and some of it isn't. But listen carefully. But of the times and the seasons, brethren, ye have no need that I write unto you, for yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they shall say, peace and safety, or peace and security really is what it means, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, they shall not escape. Now you got several references here to the removal of the Church of Jesus Christ. Travail upon a woman is one of the keys to the birth of the church and its taking away. But ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. Ye are all children of the light, children of the day. We are not of the night, nor of darkness. Therefore let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. So here we have a verse of Scripture or verses of Scripture that are warning us that this thing is going to come upon the world very suddenly, no warning, no signs, whatever, and boom, it's over. And if you look up the word sudden, it just simply means unexpected, very suddenly, and it's totally unforeseen. And that is a key word, unawares, suddenly, unforeseen. In other words, this seems to come from an area nobody expected it to come from, such as a galactic superwave of Dr. Paul LaViolette, just as a possibility. The word destruction simply means ruin, destroy, death. So there you got that one. Here's another one for you. For as a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. That's a global event, folks. Not the taking of America or a war in the Middle East. This is a global event. Watch ye therefore, and pray always, that ye may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. Now a snare, here's the meaning of a snare, a trap, or a noose. Of snares in which birds are entangled and caught implies unexpectedly, suddenly, because birds and beasts are caught unawares. A snare, whatever brings peril, loss, and destruction of a sudden and unexpected deadly peril. Whole earth, what's the meaning of whole? It means each, every, any, all, the whole, everyone, all things, everything. Sudden destruction, to snare then, has to come upon the entire planet. It's a global event of some type. And it comes out of the blue, totally unexpected, and catches the entire world by surprise, and I think it's going to catch the church by total surprise. And it's verified by Thessalonians, where it talks about they will not escape. It's the Christians that will escape. And pray always, he said, that you be counted worthy to escape all these things. Kind of interesting. The word escape simply means flee out of, flee away, to seek safety, or to escape. So isn't that interesting? Here we are on the eve of coming up on the very final part of 70th year of Israel, and the world is totally unaware, just like they were when Israel became a nation in 1948. They just, that's interesting that Israel has become a nation, and when the 6-Day War occurred, well, they were always fighting over there. There's nothing big deal about that. 1973 war, no, nothing about that. And on this goes. And meanwhile, the signs that the Lord has given us are piling up rapidly. And so what I'm trying to get at is this is a time when people really need to be alert as to what is happening in Israel, because Israel is a timepiece for planet Earth. And we have most of the other signs already in place. When Trump dedicated the embassy, out of his mouth came peace and security. They've all been saying peace and security. Bibi Netanyahu's been saying peace and security. So that part of it is totally fulfilled. And a lot of people say, well, we got tons more to go, and there's no way any rapture could take place, any removal of the bride. I wouldn't be so sure about that. It's a very good possibility that anything can happen in these days and age. What do you think, Larry?
Well, that's very true, Stuart. As a matter of fact, I was talking recently about some generals that were saying they've never seen Russian submarine movements like they're seeing now. And by the way, and I'd like your opinion, there's a new report just come out on Yahoo News saying that Republican Senator Rand Paul has now said that he personally delivered a letter from Trump to Putin in his recent Moscow visit. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd love to know what was said. It seemed very, very odd to me that Putin has been meeting with basically world leaders, and all just before this Israeli breakout. Now, it was, what's his name, Henry Groover, that had the vision that when the war broke out in Gaza, that was the beginning of the big war. So it's probably going to, go into little spurts here and there, but sooner or later this thing's going to blow. And don't forget, folks, that Syria or Iran is really loading up with troops in Syria for a final push. What's your take, Larry?
Yeah, it seems this army that Assad is building on the northern border of Israel is really huge, and it's lots of Iranians and Syrian rebels and Syrian regular army, Hezbollah. I mean, it's made up of a conglomeration of groups. And so Gaza seems to be something as a distractor to me right now that's distracting Israel and actually pulling some of the Israeli defense forces away from the northern border while that army really is building. And there are Russians now on the Golan. So this is interesting, Stuart.
Yeah, very. Well, thanks a lot, Larry, for coming on. We'll see everybody tomorrow night with a longer show. And keep your heads up. Hopefully this truce will keep, but who knows. Anyway, thanks a lot, everyone, for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow night, the Lord willing. Good night, everyone.